The snow came down in silence over Ashwood Cemetery. December in Montana meant early darkness, meant cold that settled into bones and stayed there. Ellen Thorne worked the shovel with steady rhythm. She had dug 243 graves in 8 years. This would be 244. The grave was for old Walter Morrison, who died at 87 in his sleep. A good death. Ellen didn't believe in good deaths anymore, but if she did, Walter's would qualify. He'd lived long enough to see great-grandchildren. He died warm and without pain. That was more than most people got. She was 31 years old. She looked older in certain lights. The work did that. The Montana winters did that. Grief did that most of all. The shovel bit into frozen earth. She'd learned to read the soil like some people read books. This patch was clay-heavy, would hold water come spring. She'd need to mark it for drainage work. Details mattered. The dead deserved care, even if they couldn't appreciate it anymore. Ellen straightened, pressing a hand to her lower back. The cottage sat 50 yards away, yellow light in one window. Home, if you could call it that. One room, one bed, one chair, one cup, one bowl. Everything single, everything alone. 8 years of that, 8 years since Sarah. She didn't let herself think the name often. Thinking it meant remembering. Remembering meant the tightness in her chest that made breathing hard. But December was Sarah's month. Born December 10th, died December 19th. 3 years old. Leukemia didn't care about Christmas or children's laughter or mothers who would have traded places in a heartbeat. Ellen had been 23, married, planning a future. Then the diagnosis came and the future became a countdown. 11 months from first symptom to last breath. 11 months of hospitals and hope, and watching her daughter fade like light through a closing door. The marriage ended 4 months after Sarah. Her ex-husband, Michael, he couldn't look at her without seeing the ghost. Fair enough, Ellen couldn't look at herself without seeing failure. She'd been Sarah's mother. Mothers were supposed to protect. She hadn't. So she'd left the city, come back to Ashwood, where she'd grown up, and asked Father Callahan if the church needed a gravedigger. He'd given her the job without questions. Small mercies. The cemetery was 11 acres of rolling Montana grassland turned into final resting place. 100-year-old oaks at the eastern border. Hawthorn trees scattered throughout, planted by some long-dead groundskeeper who'd believed in beauty even among headstones. Ellen maintained them all. Mowed in summer, cleared snow in winter, planted wildflowers come spring because the dead deserve color. She'd buried Sarah under the biggest hawthorn tree, the one that bloomed white every May like a promise the world kept making and breaking. Ellen visited the grave every morning, set fresh flowers when she could afford them, talked sometimes, though she'd stopped expecting answers. The wind picked up. Ellen shivered, pulled her coat tighter, almost done with Walter's grave. Another hour of work, maybe less. Then back to the cottage. Canned soup for dinner. Read a few pages of whatever library book she'd borrowed. Sleep, wake, repeat. This was life now. This was enough. It had to be, and she drove the shovel down hard. The blade struck something that wasn't earth. Ellen frowned. Rocks weren't uncommon, but this felt different. She knelt, brushed away dirt with gloved hands. Not a rock. Bone. Old bone, yellowed and brittle. Must have disturbed some ancient engrave back before they kept proper records. She'd report it to Father Callahan in the morning. For now, she'd work around it. The dead had all the time in the world. Walter could wait another day. Ellen stood reaching for the shovel. That's when she heard it. A child's voice. Small, broken, desperate. Don't leave me. Ellen froze. The wind carried the words away almost before she could process them. But she'd heard. God help her, she'd heard. Don't leave me, Mama, please. The voice came from deeper in the cemetery, past the hawthorn trees, past the section where families paid for marble headstones, out near the old section where graves had numbers instead of names because time forgot everyone eventually. Ellen shouldn't go. She'd learned not to investigate sounds in the dark. Graveyards played tricks. Wind through trees sounded like whispers. Settling earth sounded like footsteps. Grief-addled minds heard what they needed to hear. But that voice, that crying, it sounded like Sarah. Ellen was moving before she decided to move. Left the shovel, left Walter's unfinished grave, grabbed the lantern hanging from the cottage porch and headed into the darkness between the headstones. The snow was coming down harder now. Her boots left prints that filled in almost immediately. The lantern swung in her hand, throwing shadows that bent and stretched across the graves like reaching fingers. "Hello?" Her voice came out rough. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. "Is someone there?" The crying came again, closer now. Ellen moved faster, navigating by memory through rows of markers she could name with her eyes closed. Johnson, Martinez, O'Brien, families she'd buried, people she'd mourned alongside. Then she saw them. At the far edge of the cemetery where the fence met the forest, someone was collapsed against a tombstone. Someone enormous. Even lying down, they were massive, easily 7 feet if they stood. Broad shoulders, arms thick as tree trunks, and green. Their skin was green. Ellen's brain stuttered. Orc. This was an orc. Orcs weren't uncommon in Montana, not anymore. 30 years since the revelation when magic came back to the world and brought all the old things with it. Elves and dwarves and creatures from stories. They'd always been here, they said, just hidden, just waiting. Most humans adjusted. Some didn't. Ellen hadn't cared either way. The dead didn't care about species, but she'd never seen an orc this close. Never seen one dying, because this orc was dying. Ellen could tell from 20 feet away. The breathing was wrong, shallow and wet. The kind of breathing that meant blood in places blood shouldn't be. The wound ran from ribs to hip, badly wrapped in cloth that had soaked through black in the lantern light. And beside the orc, clinging to one massive arm with both small hands, was a child. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, green-skinned, her face streaked with tears and mud. She was crying with the kind of desperation that came from knowing. Children knew. They always knew. "Don't leave me, Mama," the child's voice cracked. "Don't leave me, please." Ellen dropped to her knees without thinking. The snow soaked through her pants. She didn't notice. The lantern hit the ground, still burning. She didn't see it. All she saw was the child. All she heard was Sarah's voice 8 years ago saying, "Mama, it hurts in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and death." Ellen's hands moved on instinct, pressed against the wound. The orc woman's eyes opened. Dark eyes, fierce even now, proud. They focused on Ellen with perfect clarity. Around the orc's neck hung a medallion. Heavy metal carved with symbols Ellen didn't recognize. It caught the lantern light and held it. Ellen grabbed her herb pouch with shaking hands. Yarrow. She grew it in her garden, dried it, carried it always. Good for bleeding. She pressed it into the wound with practiced care. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But all she had. "You're going to be okay." Ellen heard herself saying it. Lies. Comforting lies. The same ones doctors had told her about Sarah. "Just stay still. Stay with me." The orc woman's hand moved, slowly with obvious effort. She reached for the medallion at her throat. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was stronger than Ellen expected. She pulled the medallion free. The chain broke. She held it out to Ellen. Then she spoke. Her voice was barely sound, more breath than words. Labored and slow, but deliberate. "Are you a good woman?" Ellen's hand stopped. Of all the things she'd expected, a name, a destination, a cry for help, this wasn't it. She looked at the orc's face, at the measuring eyes, at the way she held herself even now, even in this, with bearing, that had never stopped being exactly who she was. Ellen thought about Sarah, about 8 years of graves, about whether good people let children die. "I try to be." The words came out raw, honest. "I try." The orc woman held Ellen's gaze for a long moment, long enough that Ellen was aware of every second, of the wind, of the cold, of the child's crying, of breathing getting shallower and further apart. Then the orc pressed the medallion into Ellen's hand, closed Ellen's fingers around it. The metal was warm from her skin. She said one word, a name. Kira, the little girl, her daughter's name. Then she was gone. The silence that followed was the particular kind that comes after something irreversible. Not empty, full of all the things that had been present a moment before and were now absent. Ellen stayed kneeling. The medallion was in her fist. She was still pressing her coat against the wound out of pure reflex, still holding pressure. Her hands not yet understanding there was nothing left to hold. The child's crying rose, then broke apart into something beyond crying, a sound too large and too old for a 5-year-old body, grief that had nowhere near enough room to go. It was the worst sound Ellen had heard since Sarah's last breath. Ellen didn't know what to do. She was 31 years old and she'd buried 243 people, and she'd sat with dying strangers more times than she could count. But she'd never been the last person a dying mother entrusted with her child. She did the only thing she could think of. She put her arms around Kira. The child was larger than expected. Orc heritage. But still small, still shaking. Her grief was enormous, and her small hands grabbed Ellen's coat with a desperation that made something in Ellen's chest go sharp and tight. Ellen held her anyway. Held her and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Let her cry into a gravedigger's coat until the sound started to slow, until it became just shaking, until it became just quiet. After a long time, Ellen couldn't have said how long she'd stopped being aware of the cold. Kira pulled back and looked at her. She had her mother's eyes. Dark, deep, fiercely intelligent, already carrying something no 5-year-old should have to carry. Where will Mama go? Her voice was so small, Ellen looked at the cemetery around them, at Sarah's grave under the hawthorn tree, at the place that had become her whole world. I'll give her the best spot. Ellen's voice was steady, steadier than she felt. Under the hawthorn tree, where it blooms white every spring, where the light comes through the branches in the afternoon. Kira looked toward the tree for a long moment, studied it with the seriousness of someone making a real assessment. Then she looked back at Ellen. Mama would have liked that. She took Ellen's hand. Her small green fingers wrapped around two of Ellen's, and she held on, and Ellen let her. They stayed there together in the dark for a little while longer. Then Ellen noticed the other bodies. She'd been so focused on the orc woman and the child that she hadn't seen them. But they were there. 2 more orcs, both male, both armored, both dead. Ellen moved closer, still holding Kira's hand. The bodies were fresh, hours old at most. One had a wound across the throat. Clean, professional. The other had been stabbed between the armor plates. Someone who knew what they were doing. These weren't random deaths. This was an ambush, a planned attack. The orc woman hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered. Her guards had been murdered, and she'd fled here to the cemetery to die among strangers. Ellen looked down at the medallion in her hand, at the symbols carved into it. This meant something, something important, something dangerous. She looked at Kira, at this child who'd just lost everything. Ellen had a choice. Call Sheriff Hargrave, report the bodies, hand Kira over to whatever passed for Orc Social Services. Walk away, go back to her cottage in her single chair and her routine of comfortable numbness. Or, come on, sweetheart. Ellen squeezed Kira's hand gently. Let's go home. The cottage had never held anyone but Ellen, not since she'd moved in 8 years ago. 1 room, 1 bed, one of everything, built for isolation, for grief that needed space. Kira stood in the doorway and looked at it all with the careful assessment of a 5-year-old who'd clearly been raised to evaluate situations practically. She looked at the single bed, the single chair, the single cup and bowl, the fire burning low, the bread on the table that was 2 days old, the walls that were clean but bare, the floor that was swept but cold. She looked at the photographs of Sarah covering every surface. Who is that? Kira pointed. My daughter. Ellen's voice caught. Sarah, she died a long time ago. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then very solemnly, I'm sorry. Children understood loss, even young ones, especially young ones. Ellen built up the fire, found extra blankets she'd stored away, made soup from a ham bone and the herbs in her garden. Proper soup, the kind you made for someone you cared about. Kira ate sitting in the single chair while Ellen sat on the edge of the bed. The child ate carefully, without haste. When she was done, she pushed the bowl toward Ellen. It's good, thank you. They looked at each other across the small table. Kira held the medallion in both hands, turned it over, looked at the carvings. Do you have family? Ellen asked gently. People who might be looking for you. Kira was quiet. Then Aunt Rena, Mama's sister. But I don't know where she is. We'll find her. Ellen Mano it. That's tomorrow's problem. Tonight you need sleep. She gave Kira the bed, pulled the blankets up to her chin, both the old ones and the new ones she dug out. Good night, Kira said quietly. Good night. Ellen lay down by the fire on her folded coat. She listened to Kira's breathing slow and even out, stared at the ceiling, thought about what in the world she was going to do. The answer she'd learned over 8 years was to keep doing the next thing. Don't look at the mountain, look at the step. Take the step, then take the next one. Tomorrow's next thing would be burying the orc woman properly. Tonight's next thing was sleep. Ellen closed her eyes. For the first time in 8 years, she fell asleep to the sound of someone else breathing in the room. Morning came cold and clear. Ellen woke to find Kira already up, standing by the window looking out at the cemetery. "Can I help?" The child's voice was steady, determined. "Help with what, Barry, Mama?" Ellen's chest tightened, but she nodded. "Yes, you can help." They buried Thora Ironwood at first light. Ellen did it with more care than she'd given any grave in 8 years. She took time with the depth and dimensions, used good stones she'd been saving for something special, smoothed the earth at the end until it was right. Kira sat on the low wall and watched without speaking. She'd stopped crying. She had the look of someone who'd cried everything available and arrived on the other side of it at something quieter and harder. When it was done, Ellen stepped back. The grave was next to Sarah's, under the hawthorn tree. The branches were bare now in winter, but come spring they'd bloom white. The light would come through like something worth looking at. Kira walked up to the grave, knelt down, placed a stone on the fresh earth. Ellen watched, remembered Kira doing the same thing last night. Understanding dawned slowly. This was an orc tradition. Stones on graves meant something. Honor, maybe. Respect. Love. Kira stood, looked at Ellen with her mother's eyes. "Thank you." The word carried weight, formality, something that meant more than casual gratitude. Ellen knelt down to Kira's level. "Your mama asked me to be good. I'm going to try, Plea. That means taking care of you for as long as you need." Kira studied her face, then very quietly, "Okay." They walked back to the cottage together. Ellen made breakfast, eggs and toast, real food, the kind you made when someone else was counting on you. After Ellen took Kira into town, Ashwood had one main street, population 300 on a good day. Everyone knew everyone. Privacy was a myth. Beatrice Brennan ran the general store and the seamstress shop from the same building. She was 45, red-haired, and had strong opinions about everything but a fundamentally practical nature. She looked up when Ellen walked in with Kira. Her eyebrows rose. "Ellen Thorne, haven't seen you in town for weeks. And who's this?" "This is Kira. She's staying with me. She needs clothes." Bea looked at Kira, at the green skin, at the way she held Ellen's hand, at Ellen who hadn't let anyone close in 8 years. "Staying with you," Bea repeated. "Yes." For how long? Ellen looked down at Kira, at this child who'd lost everything, who needed someone, who'd been given to Ellen by a dying woman's trust. "As long as she needs." Bea studied them both, then nodded. "I have some things that might fit. Let's see what we can do." 2 hours later, they left with 3 outfits, new boots and a warm coat. Bea had charged half her normal price and thrown in a stuffed rabbit without comment. Word spread fast in small towns. By dinner time, everyone knew Ellen Thorne had an orc child. By the next morning, opinions were forming. Sheriff Hargrave showed up on the 3rd day. He was 52, thick around the middle, and fundamentally suspicious of anything that disrupted routine. "Ellen." He stood on her porch, not quite blocking the door, but close. "We need to talk about the child. Her name is Kira, the orc child." He shifted his weight. "People are concerned. People should mind their business. An orc child shows up out of nowhere, you take her in, no explanation. That's everyone's business." He looked past her into the cottage. "Where are her people? Where's she from?" Ellen thought about the bodies, the medallion hidden in her drawer, the assassination that had brought Kira here. Her mother died. Asked me to care for her. That's all you need to know. That's not how this works, Ellen. There are procedures, social services. We need to verify she's in my care. Ellen's voice was quiet but absolute. Until her family comes for her, she stays with me. Hargrave's jaw tightened. This could cause problems. Then people will have to learn to live with problems. She closed the door, leaned against it, heard Hargrave's heavy footsteps walking away. Kira appeared from behind the table where she'd been hiding. "Are they going to take me away?" Ellen knelt down, looked Kira in the eyes. "No, I made a promise to your mama. I keep my promises. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Ellen worked the cemetery in the mornings. Kira came with her when weather allowed. They worked their herb garden together. Ellen taught plant names and uses. Kira learned like a sponge, retaining everything, asking smart questions. Afternoons, Ellen walked Kira to B's store where B had set up a small school space. 3 other children came for lessons. Reading, writing, basic arithmetic. The first week was hard. Children were honest about their curiosity in ways adults had learned to disguise, and some of that honesty was unkind. Kira came home the third day with a cut on her palm from a stone someone had thrown. She was quiet and composed in the way she'd been since her mother died, holding something difficult carefully. Ellen cleaned the cut, bandaged it, sat across from Kira at the table. "Tell me what happened," Kira told her. All of it, factually, without drama, the names of the children, the words they'd used, the sequence of events. Ellen listened. When Kira finished, Ellen sat quietly for a moment. Then she spoke steadily. "Some people are afraid of things they don't understand. Fear makes people behave badly. This isn't about your worth. It's about their limitation." Kira looked at her. "Mama said the same thing." "Your mama was right." Ellen reached across the table, took Kira's uninjured hand. "I'm going to talk to B. She'll talk to the children. If it happens again, you tell me immediately." It didn't happen again. B was a force of nature when she wanted to be. The situation improved. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but enough. 6 weeks passed. Ellen's life changed in ways she hadn't expected and couldn't quite name. Mornings were different when there was another person in them. She found herself saving interesting things to tell Kira about. Found herself thinking about what to make for dinner instead of just opening a can. Kira's laugh, genuine and sudden and always slightly surprised by itself, as if joy still startled her, it became the best sound in Ellen's daily life. One afternoon, maybe 6 weeks after Kira arrived, they were weeding the herb garden. Kira was swinging her feet on the wall, watching Ellen work. "I like living here," Kira said matter-of-factly. Ellen looked up at her. Kira looked back with her mother's eyes and her own particular expression. Less measuring than her mother's had been. More open. Still fierce, but with warmth underneath. "I'm glad," Ellen said. She meant it more than she knew how to say. That evening, Ellen made stew. Real stew with vegetables from her garden and meat from the butcher. They ate at the table. Kira talked about her lessons, about a bird she'd seen, about how the hawthorn tree was starting to show tiny buds, even though it was still winter. Ellen listened and responded and felt something in her chest that had been frozen for 8 years start to thaw. After dinner, after Kira had gone to bed, Ellen sat by the fire, looked at the photographs of Sarah, felt the guilt that always came, the sense that loving another child meant betraying the one she'd lost. But maybe it didn't have to be betrayal. Maybe it could be honoring. Sarah would have wanted Ellen to be happy, would have wanted her to help someone who needed it. Ellen touched Sarah's photograph. "I'm trying, baby girl. I'm trying to be good." Outside, snow started falling again, soft and steady, the kind that would cover everything by morning in a blanket of white. Ellen was almost asleep when she heard it. Horses, multiple horses, coming away the road fast. She was at the window in seconds. 3 riders, enormous even on horseback. Orcs, armored, armed. They stopped at the cemetery gate. The lead rider dismounted, female, tall even for an orc, dark hair pulled back, armor that had seen real use, a sword at her hip that was worn and real. She looked at the cottage, then at the cemetery, then back at the cottage. Her eyes were the same shade as Kira's. Ellen's heart stopped. The rider walked to the door, knocked once, hard enough to shake the frame. Ellen opened it. The orc woman stood there. She was perhaps 28. The most physically striking person Ellen had ever seen. The sword at her hip was not decorative. The look in her eyes was not friendly. She spoke in careful English, precise and formal. "Is this the home of the woman who buried Thora Ironwood?" Ellen's hand tightened on the door. "It is." The orc's expression did something complicated. Grief held at careful distance. Something that might have been hope. And that flat evaluating quality Ellen recognized immediately and completely, because she'd seen it before, in a dying woman's eyes, in this same cemetery, 6 weeks ago. Ellen said the name before she knew she was going to. Rena. The warrior went very still. Her hand, which had been near the gate, stopped moving. How do you know my name? I held your sister's hand when she died. The silence that followed was immense. The orc woman Rena put one hand on the doorframe. Her face did something private and complicated. The composure held, but only just. Then Kira appeared behind Ellen, sleep-tousled, confused. She looked up at the stranger in the doorway and said very quietly, Aunt Rena. Rena dropped to her knees right there on the porch. Opened her arms, Kira ran into them. Rena held her niece with the specific tightness of someone who'd spent weeks imagining the worst. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Ellen stepped back, gave them space, went to make tea she didn't want because her hands needed something to do. When she turned around, Rena was standing in the cottage. She'd let Kira go, was looking around at the small space, at the two chairs now instead of one, at the child's clothes folded neatly, at the photographs of Sarah. At Ellen, her eyes held 100 questions, and underneath them all, one that mattered most. Where did you get that medallion? Ellen reached into her pocket, pulled out the heavy metal disc, held it out. Your sister gave it to me. Before she died, she asked me one question. Are you a good woman? I told her I try to be. She gave me Kira, and then she was gone. Rena took the medallion, looked at the symbols that meant something Ellen didn't understand. Her jaw was tight. When she looked up at Ellen, her eyes were measuring, evaluating, trying to understand what kind of person gets trusted with a dying woman's most precious thing. Why did my sister trust you? Ellen had looked at Kira, at this child that she'd come to love in 6 weeks, at the life that had started to feel like it meant something again. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm trying to deserve it. Rena studied her face, then looked at Kira, at the way the child stood close to Ellen, at the obvious comfort between them. We need to talk, Rena said. All of us. About what happened. About what comes next. All right, Ellen's voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. Let's talk. Because she knew. Whatever happened next, whatever Rena wanted, whatever the truth about that medallion was, everything was about to change. The dying oath she'd made to Thora was about to be tested. And Ellen Thorne, who'd spent 8 years alone with her grief, was about to fight for something again. For someone again. For Kira. Rena Ironwood didn't sit. She stood by the fire, tall and armored and dangerous, while Kira slept in the bed behind a curtain Ellen had rigged for privacy. The cottage felt smaller with her in it, not because of her size, though she was easily 6.5 feet tall, because of her presence. The way soldiers fill space. The way people trained for violence carry it with them even in stillness. Ellen sat in her chair and waited. She'd learned patience in 8 years of graves. You couldn't rush dirt, couldn't rush grief, couldn't rush people who needed time to find their words. Rena's eyes moved across the cottage, taking inventory. The herb bundles hanging from the rafters, the neat stack of firewood, the clean dishes, the child's drawings pinned to the wall that hadn't been there 6 weeks ago. Ellen had saved everyone. Kira drew trees, mostly, and graves, and a figure Ellen recognized as herself, tall and thin, with a shovel. Tell me everything. Rena's voice was controlled. Careful. From the beginning. The night my sister died. So Ellen told her. All of it. The cry she'd heard, finding Thora collapsed against the tombstone. The wound that was already too late. Kira crying, the way Thora had looked at her and asked that one question. The medallion pressed into her palm. The name Thora had spoken with her last breath. Ellen didn't embellish. Didn't try to make herself sound noble or brave. Just reported what had happened the way you'd report weather. Facts, sequence, truth. When she finished, Rena was quiet for a long time. You found other bodies. It wasn't a question. Ellen nodded anyway. 2. Male. Armored. They'd been killed professionally. Hours before your sister. I buried them too. Didn't know what else to do. Show me. They walked out into the night. The temperature had dropped. Ellen's breath fogged white. Rena moved silently despite the armor. A warrior's walk. Someone who'd learned to be quiet when quiet meant survival. Ellen led her to the 3 graves under the hawthorn tree. Sarah's was leftmost. Then Thora's. Then the 2 guards in unmarked plots. Rena knelt at Thora's grave, placed her hand flat on the earth. Her shoulders were rigid, her breathing controlled. But Ellen knew grief when she saw it. knew the particular way people held themselves together when falling apart wasn't an option. She was my sister. Rena's voice was rough. My only sister. We were 3 years apart. I followed her everywhere when we were children. She was brilliant, fierce, the best leader our clan had seen in generations. Ellen said nothing. Let Rena talk. She was also clan heir. Next in line to lead the Ironwood. Our grandmother, Elder Morvac, rules now. But Thora was being prepared to take over. Had been trained since birth. Rena looked up at Ellen. Did you know any of this? No. Not until now. Rena studied her face, looking for lies, for calculation, for any sign this was more than it appeared. Ellen met her eyes steadily. She had nothing to hide, nothing to gain, just a promise to keep. Our Uncle Dravik wanted power. Rena stood. He arranged a marriage for Thora. Political alliance with the Blackstone clan would have given him significant influence. Thora refused, said she'd choose her own path. Dravik didn't accept that. Ellen understood before Rena finished. He had her killed. He had her ambushed. Sent assassins after her escort. My sister fled, made it almost 50 miles before the wound got too bad. She came here, to your cemetery, to die among strangers. Rena's jaw was tight, and to save Kira. Ellen looked at the small grave, at the child sleeping in her cottage, at the enormity of what had been trusted to her. The medallion, Rena said. Do you know what it means to know? It's the Ironwood seal, passed from clan leader to heir. When Thora gave it to you, when she transferred it in her final moments, she made you Kira's guardian under Orc law. Legally, bindingly, regardless of your species or status. Ellen's chest tightened. I didn't know, but you kept her anyway. Fed her, clothed her, protected her from your own people's suspicion. Rena stepped closer. Why Ellen thought about how to answer, about all the complicated reasons, about Sarah, about 8 years of emptiness, about hearing a child cry and being unable to walk away. Because she needed someone, Ellen said simply, and I was there. Rena was quiet. Then, that's simple. That's simple. My sister asked if you were good. You said you tried. Are you good? Ellen looked at her hands, at the dirt under her fingernails that never quite came clean, at the scars from 8 years of digging. I let my daughter die. I wasn't good enough to save her. Maybe I'm trying to make up for that. Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe I just needed something to care about again. She met Rena's eyes. I don't know if I'm good, but I love Kira. In 6 weeks, she's become everything. I'll protect her with everything I have. Rena searched her face. The evaluating look softened. Just slightly. Just enough. I've been tracking my sister for 11 days. Killed 3 assassins along the way. Followed rumors and blood trails, and finally asked in your town if anyone had seen an Orc woman with a child. Rena's voice was tired. They told me the Gravedigger had taken in an Orc girl. I expected a kidnapping. Expected ransom demands. Expected someone trying to exploit a clan heir for profit. I don't want anything. I'm beginning to see that. Rena looked back at the graves. But Kira can't stay here forever. She's the heir now. Thora's death makes her next in line. She needs to go to the stronghold. Needs training, education. Needs to learn what it means to be Ironwood. Ellen's stomach dropped. She'd known this was coming. Had known from the moment Rena appeared that this temporary arrangement would end. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. I understand. Do you? Rena turned to face her fully. Because I'm not sure you do. Kira is 5 years old. She just lost her mother. She's bonded with you. Taking her away now abruptly would damage her. Possibly permanently. Hope flickered. Dangerous hope. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to assess the situation. Determine what's actually best for Kira. Not what tradition demands. Not what politics require. What's best for my niece. Rena's expression was unreadable. I'm staying for a while. To watch, to understand, to decide. How long? As long as it takes. Rena set up camp at the edge of the cemetery. She had a tent, supplies, everything she needed to be self-sufficient. She refused Ellen's offer of the cottage floor. Said she preferred open air. Said she needed space to think. But the next morning, Ellen found the blankets she'd left folded outside the tent were gone. And there was a small pile of firewood stacked neatly by her cottage door that hadn't been there the night before. They didn't speak about it. The days developed a new rhythm. Ellen worked the cemetery. Kira helped or went to lessons with B. Rena watched. She was always there. At the edge of Ellen's vision, not intrusive, not obviously surveilling, just present, observing Ellen with Kira, the way they moved around each other, the easy comfort, the routines they'd built. Ellen tried not to let it change how she acted, tried to just be herself, but it was hard being watched by someone deciding your worth. On the third day, Rena joined them for dinner. Ellen had made stew. Nothing fancy, just vegetables and meat and thyme. She set 3 bowls on the table without comment. Rena sat without being asked. Kira talked through the meal, told Rena about her lessons, about the herbs she was learning, about the hawthorn tree that would bloom in spring. Rena listened with the attention of someone who hadn't heard her niece's voice in too long. After Kira went to bed, Rena stayed. "You're a good cook," Rena said. "Just doing. It's just stew. You made it with care." "There's a difference." Ellen washed the dishes. Rena dried. It felt strange, domestic, like something from a life Ellen didn't have anymore. "Tell me about your daughter," Rena said quietly. Ellen's hands stilled in the wash water. No one asked about Sarah. No one in Ashwood talked about her. It was too painful, too awkward. Easier to pretend Ellen had always been alone. Her name was Sarah. She was 3 when she died. Leukemia, I couldn't save her. Ellen's voice was flat, factual, the only way she could talk about it. "I was her mother. I was supposed to protect her. I failed." "You didn't fail. You were mortal. Facing something you couldn't control doesn't change the outcome." Rena was quiet for a moment. "Then I have a scar on my left shoulder from the ambush that killed Thor's escort. I wasn't there. I was away on patrol. By the time I heard what happened, my sister was already running, already dying. I couldn't save her either." Ellen looked at her, at this warrior who seemed invincible. "Sometimes I press my hand against the scar at night when the dreams are bad," Rena continued. "Pain is more manageable than grief, more concrete, has edges I can understand." Ellen understood that, understood reaching for something physical when what you felt had no shape. "I dig," she said, "when it gets too much. I dig graves even when there's no one's to bury. The physical work, the exhaustion. It helps. We're both trying to survive things that don't have survival instructions." Yes, they finished the dishes in silence, but it was different silence than before. Companionable, shared. A week became 2. 2 became 3. Rena started leaving stones on graves when she passed them. Not just Thora's, all of them. Ellen learned this was how orcs honored the dead. Any dead, a sign of respect for the journey everyone takes. Rena left a stone on Sarah's grave. Ellen found it one morning, small and smooth, carefully chosen, placed with obvious intention. She sat down in the snow and cried for the first time in months. The cultural exchange happened gradually. Rena taught Ellen words in Orcish, corrected her pronunciation with varying degrees of patience. Ellen was terrible at it. Her mouth didn't make the right shapes. The guttural sounds came out mangled. But Rena kept trying, kept repeating, kept teaching. Vrathkin Rena said one evening, "It means the place worth defending. Not just physically, emotionally, the warm center, the thing inside a thing that means safe." Ellen repeated it. "Got it wrong, tried again." "Close enough," Rena said. And Ellen recognized those words. Recognized being trusted with something approximate rather than perfect. Recognized acceptance. Ellen taught Rena about Ashwood, about small-town dynamics, about why people ask questions they already knew answers to as a form of acknowledgement, about the unspoken rules that governed everything. Rena found most of it baffling. Why does the baker pretend not to see the line, she asked after their first trip to town together? Everyone's clearly waiting, but they all stand back and gesture for others to go first. It wastes time. Ellen laughed, actually laughed. It felt strange. Good strange. It's politeness, social lubrication. It's inefficient. It's human. Orcs just say what we mean. Direct, no padding. I've noticed. Rena's directness was refreshing. After 8 years of Ashwood's careful avoidance of Ellen's grief, of people talking around her loss, Rena's blunt honesty was like cold water. Shocking. Clarifying. When Rena asked questions, she meant them. When she stated opinions, she owned them. When she said something, it was true. Ellen found herself talking more than she had in years. About her grandmother who'd taught her herbs, about growing up in Ashwood, about her marriage and its end, about the shape of her grief. Rena listened, really listened. Didn't offer platitudes or false comfort, just attention, full presence. In return, Rena talked about the stronghold, about clan politics, about what it meant to be Ironwood, about training as a warrior from childhood, about the weight of duty and honor and expectations, about Thora. She used to sneak me sweets when I was little, Rena said one night. Our grandmother was strict about training, no distractions, no indulgences, but Thora would hide honey cakes in her armor, give them to me after practice. She'd say, "Don't tell Morvac. This is our secret." Rena's voice was soft, remembering. She sounds wonderful. She was. She was everything I wanted to be. Strong, smart, fair. She ruled with her head, but she loved with her whole heart. Kira was her world. Rena looked at Ellen. That's why I know she chose right, giving Kira to you. Thora's judgment was never wrong. If she trusted you with our most precious thing, you deserve that trust. Ellen's throat was tight. I'm trying to deserve it. I know, I've been watching. That's what I've learned. You're trying, every day, every moment. You try to be good. Rena paused. That's all any of us can do. The shift happened so gradually Ellen almost didn't notice. But one morning she woke up and realized Rena had moved her tent closer to the cottage, that she joined them for every meal now, that she'd started teaching Kira fighting stances in the afternoon, that she smiled more, that the suspicion had faded completely and been replaced by something that looked almost like friendship. Or maybe more than friendship. Something Ellen didn't want to examine too closely because examining it meant acknowledging how much she'd come to value Rena's presence, how much she looked forward to their evening talks, how much she noticed the way Rena moved, the rare smiles, the unexpected gentleness under all that armor. Ellen told herself it didn't matter. Rena would leave eventually, take Kira to the stronghold. Ellen would go back to her routine of comfortable numbness. This was temporary. Everything was temporary, but temporary could still hurt when it ended. The crisis came in the fourth week. Tommy Morrison was 10 years old, grandson of the Walter Morrison. Ellen had been digging a grave for the night she found Thora. Tommy was all knees and elbows and enthusiasm. Good kid, kind. He came running to the cemetery one afternoon, face-white words tumbling out. Miss Ellen. Miss Ellen's snake bit me, big one. My arm. Ellen saw the puncture marks, saw the swelling already starting, saw the distinct triangular pattern that meant rattlesnake. Her stomach dropped. B. Ellen shouted toward town. Get Doc Harrison now. But even as she said it, she knew. Doc Harrison was 60 miles away in Helena visiting his daughter. Wouldn't be back for 2 days. Ashwood was too small for backup, too remote for ambulances that could arrive in time. Tommy was going to die. Ellen's mind raced. Yarrow wouldn't work. Nothing in her standard kit would work. This needed anti-venom, needed medicine she didn't have. Rena appeared, took one look at Tommy's arm, didn't hesitate. Inside. Now. They got Tommy to the cottage. Rena opened her pack, pulled out vials Ellen didn't recognize. Dark liquids, dried plants that looked nothing like Ellen's herbs. Hold him still, Rena commanded. Ellen did. Tommy was crying, scared. His arm was purple now, swelling up to his shoulder. Rena worked with the efficiency of battlefield medicine. Mixed compounds Ellen couldn't identify. Made a paste, applied it directly to the bite, made Tommy drink something that smelled like earth and old things. Then she pulled out a knife. Ellen's eyes widened. What are you? Trust me. Ellen looked at Rena, at this warrior who'd watched her for weeks, who'd left a stone on Sarah's grave, who'd taught Kira fighting stances with infinite patience. She trusted her. Rena made 2 small cuts, drew out venom mixed with blood, applied more paste, wrapped the arm in cloth soaked with her medicine. Then they waited. Tommy's breathing was rapid, shallow. Ellen held his good hand. Rena monitored his pulse with fingers on his throat. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. Slowly and possibly, the swelling started to go down. Tommy's breathing evened out. Color returned to his face. After an hour, he sat up. I feel better, he said, wonder in his voice. Ellen stared. How? Orc medicine. Rena was packing her supplies. We've been dealing with venom for centuries. Developed treatments your people haven't discovered yet. Tommy's mother arrived. Bea had run to get her. Mrs. Morrison saw her son sitting up, saw the empty vials, saw Rena. You saved him, she breathed. Rena shrugged. The herbs did the work. But word spread. By dinner time, the whole town knew. The orc warrior had saved Tommy Morrison's life with medicine that worked better than anything Doc Harrison had. Sheriff Hargrave showed up the next day. Not suspicious this time. Respectful. Miss Ironwood, he said, tipping his hat. Tommy's family wants to thank you. His mother sent this. He handed over a basket. Bread, preserves, a peat. Rena looked uncomfortable. I just did what was needed. You saved a child's life. That matters here. Hargrave looked at Ellen. Both of you matter. I was wrong before. About the situation. About Kira. I apologize. After he left, Ellen looked at Rena. You could have let me fail. Could have proven I'm not equipped to care for Kira. That she needs orc medicine. Orc knowledge. That I'm not enough. Rena met her eyes. You are enough. You always were. I wasn't testing you anymore, Ellen. I was helping. Because that's what family does. The word hung in the air. Family. That evening after Kira was asleep, they sat by the fire. Rena had moved into the cottage now. Not permanently, just her sleeping role by the hearth. Close enough to be part of things. Ellen had made tea. Real tea, not the weak stuff she usually drank alone. The good kind she saved for occasions that never came. I need to tell you something, Rena said. About why I really came. About what happens next. Ellen's chest tightened. Here it was, the end of temporary. Kira has to go to the stronghold, Rena continued. Elder Morvac has demanded it. She's the heir. She needs training, education, needs to learn clan ways. Ellen nodded. She'd known, had always known. But, Rena paused. Under Orc law, because Thora transferred the seal, you're Kira's legal guardian. That gives you rights, including the right to come with her. If you want. Ellen's breath caught. To the stronghold. But I'm human. You're Kira's guardian. That matters more than species. Rena leaned forward. I won't lie. It will be hard. The council won't accept you easily. Some will fight against it. Politics are complicated. But you have legal standing. And you have me. I'll stand with you. Ellen thought about Ashwood, about Sarah's grave, about 8 years of routine that had felt like safety, but was really just hiding. She thought about Kira, about morning herb lessons, about laughter at dinner, about being needed again, being useful, being loved. I made a promise to your sister, Ellen said. I keep my promises. Is that the only reason? Ellen looked at the fire? At Rena beside Ishharder, at the life that had started to feel like it meant something again. No, I love Kira. She's become my daughter in every way that matters. I can't lose her. Not after Sarah. I can't. Then come. We leave in a week. It's 8 days to the stronghold. You'll meet the council. Meet Elder Morvac. We'll face whatever comes together. Ellen nodded. Fear and hope tangled in her chest. That night she lay awake listening to Rena's breathing by the fire. Listening to Kira's soft snores behind the curtain. Thinking about everything changing again. She was almost asleep when she heard it. Horses. Fast. Coming up the cemetery road. Ellen was at the window instantly. Rena was already up, sword drawn. One rider, orc, male, heavily armed. Dravik's assassin, Rena hissed, Get Kira. Hide. Ellen didn't argue. She grabbed Kira still sleeping and ran for the cemetery. She knew every inch, every grave, every shadow. Behind her she heard the assassin dismount. Heard his heavy footsteps. Where's the child? His voice was a growl. Give her up and you live. Ellen ran deeper into the graves, placed Kira behind a large tombstone, covered her with her coat. Stay quiet, she whispered. Don't move. The assassin was following. Ellen could hear him. She grabbed her shovel from where she'd left it. Not much of a weapon, but all she had. She used the cemetery like she'd used it for 8 years. Knew which graves had unstable edges, which paths had hidden roots. She led him through the dark, staying just ahead, making him follow. He was bigger, stronger, trained. But Ellen knew this ground, knew where Walter Morrison's fresh grave was, knew the earth was still soft. She led him there, stepped carefully around the edge. He didn't. His weight on the soft earth made it give. He stumbled, just for a second. Ellen swung the shovel, connected with his knee. He roared, grabbed for her. Then an arrow sprouted from his throat. He fell, dead before he hit the ground. Rena stood 20 feet away, bow in hand, face grim. "That's the third one I've killed," she said. "They won't stop. Dravik wants Kira dead, wants to eliminate the heir." Ellen was shaking, adrenaline and fear making her hands tremble. "We have to leave. Now. Tonight." Rena nodded. "Get Kira. Pack what you need. We ride at first light." Ellen found Kira behind the tombstone, still hiding, eyes wide. "Mama Ellen." The word stopped Ellen's heart. Not the first time Kira had said it, but the first time Ellen had really heard it, really understood what it meant. She was Kira's mother now. Not by birth, by choice, by promise, by love. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. We're going on a trip." Where Ellen looked at Rena, at the dead assassin, at the cemetery that had been her whole world. "Somewhere new. Somewhere we can all be together." She picked Kira up, carried her back to the cottage, started packing by lantern light. Tomorrow they'd leave Ashwood, leave Sarah's grave, leave everything familiar. But Ellen Thorne had learned something in 6 weeks. Home wasn't a place, it was people. It was a 5-year-old orc girl who called her mama. It was a warrior who left stones on graves. It was the family you chose when everything else was taken away. And she'd fight for that family with everything she had. Dawn broke cold over Ashwood on the day they left. Ellen stood at Sarah's grave one last time. The hawthorn tree was bare branches reaching toward gray sky-like prayers. Snow covered the ground, made everything quiet, made everything feel like an ending. She knelt, touched the headstone. Simple granite, Sarah Marie Thorne, 3 years old, gone, but never forgotten. "I have to go, baby girl," Ellen whispered. "There's another little one who needs me now, but I'll come back. I promise, I'll always come back." The wind moved through the branches. Ellen chose to hear answer in it, chose to believe Sarah understood. She placed a stone on the grave. The way Rena had taught her, the orc way of honoring the dead. Behind her, Kira waited, patient, understanding. This child who'd lost her own mother knew about goodbyes. Ellen stood, took Kira's hand. They walked to where Rena waited with the horses, ready. Rena asked gently. Ellen looked back one more time. At the cemetery, at 8 years of her life, at the cottage where she'd hidden from the world. "Yes, let's go." They rode out as the sun cleared the mountains. Father Callahan watched from the church steps, raised a hand in blessing. B. Brennan stood in her shop doorway, wiped her eyes with her apron. Sheriff Hargrave nodded as they passed, respect in the gesture. Ashwood receded behind them, got smaller, disappeared. Ellen didn't look back again. The journey took 8 days through country that made Ellen feel insignificant. Vast pine forests, valleys carved by time, mountains that touched clouds. This was wilderness that predated humans, would outlast them, cared nothing for their small dramas. Ellen's horse was patient with her incompetence. Mostly, it had a particular way of sighing when she pulled the reins wrong. Made Kira giggle every time. "You're getting better, Mama Ellen," the child encouraged on day 3. "You only almost fell twice today." Progress. Rena rode ahead with Gareth and Kale. Scouts, protectors. They checked every ridge, every pass, watching for threats that might not come but couldn't be ignored. At night they camped under stars Ellen had never truly seen. Ashwood had trees, mountains. But here the sky was enormous, endless, made the universe feel close and far away simultaneously. Rena taught her constellations, orc names for them, stories behind the patterns. "That one is the warrior," Rena said, pointing. "See how the stars form a blade? Orcs believe the greatest fighters become stars when they die. Guide the living from above." "What about non-warriors?" Ellen asked. "They become the spaces between stars, the darkness that makes the light visible. Equally important, equally honored." Ellen thought about that, about Sarah, about whether her daughter was light or darkness or both. On the fifth night, Kira had nightmares, woke crying. Ellen held her while she shook. Mama's gone, Kira sobbed. I saw her die again. I see it every time I close my eyes. I know, sweetheart, I know. Does it ever stop, the dreams? Ellen thought about her own dreams, about Sarah's last days playing on loop, about 8 years of night terrors. It changes, she said honestly. Gets different. Not easier exactly, just different. And you learn to carry it. How you find things worth caring it for, people worth staying strong for. You let yourself remember the good parts too, not just the ending. Kira was quiet. Then tell me something good about my mama. Ellen looked at Rena across the fire, saw her listening. Rena spoke, voice soft. She used to sing, horrible voice, completely tone deaf. But she'd sing to you every night, made up songs, silly words. You'd laugh until you couldn't breathe. Kira smiled through tears. I remember. About the bear who was afraid of rabbits. That was her favorite. They stayed up late, trading memories, good ones, funny ones, the moments that made loss bearable because they proved love had existed. Ellen held Kira until she slept, looked at the stars, thought about spaces between light. On the seventh day, the land changed. Trees grew older, thicker. The air felt heavier, charged with something Ellen couldn't name. Wards, Rena explained. Magic protecting the stronghold. You'll feel pressure as we pass through. Don't fight it. Just let it wash over you. Ellen felt it, like walking through invisible honey, resistance against her skin. The horses shied, whinnied nervously. Then they were through, and there it was. Ironwood's stronghold rose from the mountain like it had always been there, would always be there. Walls 30 feet high, carved from living rock. Towers at each corner, reaching toward sky. Gates massive enough to dwarf the humans Ellen knew. Behind the walls a city, hundreds of buildings climbing the slope, smoke from countless fires, the sounds of life, hammers on anvils, voices calling, children laughing, and orcs. Everywhere. More than Ellen had seen in her entire life combined. Her chest tightened. This was real. This was happening. She was about to ride into that as the only human. The outsider, the woman who'd taken their air. Mama Ellen Kira's voice was small. I'm scared. Ellen looked at this child, this brave, beautiful child who'd lost everything and kept going. Me too. But we're together. That makes us strong enough. Promise, promise. Rena positioned her horse beside Ellen's. Shield, support, sister. Remember what I told you. Stay calm, be yourself. Let them see what Thora saw. The gates opened. They rode through into a courtyard that could have held all of Ashwood. Orcs stopped working, stopped talking, turned to stare. At Ellen, at Kira, at this impossible situation. The whispers started immediately. Ellen caught words. Human, heir, Thora, guardian, some voices curious, some hostile, all uncertain. They dismounted. Rena helped Ellen down. Her legs shook, from riding, from fear, from everything. A woman approached. Orc, 50 or so, face like granite, eyes that had seen battle. She wore armor that had been repaired multiple times. Bore scars with pride. Counselor Mira Rena said formally, I present Ellen Thorne, guardian of Kira Ironwood, as is her legal right. Mira's eyes swept Ellen, head to toe. Assessment, judgment, finding her wanting. The human gravedigger. Yes, you claim guardianship of our heir. I don't claim anything. Thora gave it to me. I accept it, that's all. Mira's eyebrow rose, surprised at the directness. You have no understanding of what that means, what's required, what Kira needs. Then teach me. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Ellen's voice was steady, stronger than she felt. I love Kira. I'll do whatever's necessary to give her what she needs. If that means learning your ways, I'll learn. If that means stepping aside when the time comes, I'll step aside. But until then, I'm her guardian. I made a promise to a dying woman. I keep my promises. Silence in the courtyard. Orcs listening, watching this human woman stand her ground. Mira studied Ellen's face, then looked at Kira. Child, do you want to be here? Kira pressed close to Ellen. took her hand. I want to be with Mama Ellen, wherever that is. The words fell like stones. Mama Ellen, the air calling a human mama. Publicly, proudly. Mira's expression didn't change, but Ellen saw something shift behind her eyes. You'll be given quarters. The council convenes at dawn. Be ready to defend your claim. She walked away. The crowd dispersed, slowly, reluctantly, still watching. Rena led them through stone corridors, upstairs worn smooth by centuries of feet, to a small room, 2 beds, fireplace, window overlooking the stronghold. This is us, Ellen asked. This is yours. I'm down the hall. You need anything, I'm there. After Rena left, Ellen stood at the window, looked out at the city spreading below, at a world she didn't understand, didn't belong to. Kira came to stand beside her, slipped her small green hand into Ellen's. It's okay, Mama Ellen. You have me. That's enough. Ellen squeezed her hand. Hoped she was right. That night, Ellen couldn't sleep. Lay in the unfamiliar bed listening to stones settling, to Kira's breathing, to her own heartbeat too loud in the silence. Tomorrow she'd face the council, face judgment, face the very real possibility of losing Kira. She thought about running, taking Kira, disappearing into the wilderness. But that would make them fugitives, would paint Ellen as a kidnapper, would prove everyone who doubted her right. No, she'd face this, head-on, honest, direct, the way Thora would have wanted. Just before dawn, Ellen rose. Washed, dressed in her cleanest clothes. They were still Gravedigger's clothes. Worn, patched, but clean. She braided Kira's hair, made breakfast from their supplies, tried to keep hands steady. You're going to be great, Kira said seriously. Just tell them the truth. They'll see. What if they don't? Then we fight. Together. Ellen hugged her, drew strength from this child's certainty. Rena came to escort them. She wore full armor. Official, this mattered. The Great Hall was exactly what nightmares were made of. Massive, stone, cold. 20 council members sat in a semicircle, each one larger than life, each one judging. At the head sat Elder Morvac. She was ancient, 94 years carried in every line of her face, but her eyes were sharp, present, missing nothing. Ellen stood in the center, alone. Rena had wanted to stand with her, but Ellen had refused. This was hers to face. Kira sat in observation, close enough to see, too far to help. Mira spoke first. Ellen Thorne, you stand before this council to justify your guardianship of Kira Ironwood. Speak. Ellen's mouth was desert dry. Her hands shook. She clasped them behind her back where no one could see. She looked at each council member, then at Morvac, then at Kira, and spoke. I'm a gravedigger. That's what I know. I bury the dead. I know dirt and stone, and how deep graves need to be so they don't flood. I know which herbs heal and which kill. I know how to be alone. Her voice was steady, factual, the only way through. 6 weeks ago, I heard a child crying in my cemetery. I found Thora Ironwood dying from a wound I couldn't heal. Her daughter was 5 years old and watching her mother die. I tried to save Thora. I failed. Ellen paused, gathered herself. Before she died, Thora asked me one question. Are you a good woman? I didn't know how to answer. Still don't. But I said I tried to be. She gave me the medallion, gave me Kira, said her daughter's name. Then she was gone. And you took the child, one counselor, male, older, voice sharp with suspicion. Took our air. I took a crying child home. Fed her, kept her warm, tried to comfort someone who'd lost everything. Why another counselor, female, cold, she wasn't your concern. Ellen looked at her, really looked. Because 8 years ago, I lost my daughter, Sarah. She was 3. Leukemia. I was her mother, and I couldn't save her. I spent 8 years alone after that, digging graves, hiding from life. When I heard Kira crying, it was like hearing Sarah again. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't not help. Sentiment, the male counselor again, not qualification. You're right, I'm not qualified. I don't know clan law, don't speak Orcish well, can't fight, can't teach her what you can teach her. All I can do is love her, protect her, give her a foundation of being valued, being safe, being loved. Ellen's voice grew stronger. Thora didn't choose someone qualified. She chose someone who would try, Someone who would care more about Kira's well-being than politics or power or what people thought. She chose me. I don't know why, but I'm trying to deserve it. Dravik says you kidnapped the heir. A new voice, counselor from the left, says you want power, influence, want to manipulate our clan through a child. Ellen's jaw tightened. Dravik murdered Thora, murdered her guards, sent assassins after a 5-year-old. And you're listening to his lies, Dravik's clan. You're not. No, I'm the woman Thora trusted when she had nothing left to give but trust. That should mean something. It means you were convenient. The counselor's voice dripped contempt. Nothing more. Something broke in Ellen. 8 years of held rage, of suppressed grief, of being told she wasn't enough. Convenient, her voice rose. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to love another child after losing my daughter? You think I wanted to risk my heart being destroyed again? I didn't. I was safe in my grief, safe in my cemetery, safe and alone, and dead inside. Then Kira needed someone, and I couldn't walk away. That's not convenience, that's being human. Something you seem to have forgotten. The hall exploded, shouts, arguments, some defending Ellen, more attacking, chaos. Then Elder Morvac stood. Silence fell like a hammer. She walked forward, slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached Ellen, she stopped, looked up with eyes that had seen almost a century. You knew nothing of my granddaughter when she died, no elder. When you learned who she was, what did you do? I kept my promise. Her rank didn't change Kira's need, didn't change what she'd asked of me. Morvac studied Ellen's face, looking for something, testing something. My granddaughter had a gift. She saw truth in people, saw through masks and lies. In 30 years, she never misjudged someone's character. She saw you, trusted you. That means something. The elder turned to the council. This human has honor debt from my granddaughter. Our law is clear, but words are easy. Ellen Thorne, will you prove your love with action? What do you need? The doors exploded inward. 30 warriors poured in, armed, armored, faces twisted with hate. Leading them was an orc Ellen had never seen, 40-something, scarred, eyes full of rage and righteousness. Dravik. There he pointed at Kira. The puppet, the tool of a human witch. Everything happened at once, council members shouting, guards rushing forward. Rena on her feet, sword drawn. Dravik's warriors clashed with the guards. Steel ringing, blood spattered. Ellen didn't think. Ran toward Kira, grabbed her, pulled her toward the back of the hall. Rena was there. This way, follow me. They ran through corridors Ellen didn't know. Upstairs, down passages. Behind them, fighting, screaming. Dravik's voice roaring commands. Find the heir, kill the human, take what's ours. Rena led them to a large room, herbs hanging from rafters, tables covered with medical equipment. The healer's hall. Inside now they burst through. 2 orc healers looked up in shock. Out Rena commanded, seal the doors, go. The healers ran. Rena barred the door. Heavy wood, iron reinforcement. It would hold. For a while, Ellen set Kira down. The child was shaking, terrified. Ellen held her close. It's okay, we're safe, but they weren't. Ellen could hear fighting getting closer. Dravik's forces pushing through the stronghold's defenders. They were outnumbered. She looked around the healer's hall, at the herbs, the supplicum, the things she knew better than anyone on. An idea formed. Terrible, dangerous, necessary. Rena, I need 5 minutes. You have 3. What are you doing? What I know, healing. Backwards. Ellen grabbed everything she needed. Nightshade, hemlock, wolfsbane. Substances that healed in tiny doses but destroyed in larger ones. Her grandmother had taught him, warned her, made her memorize what not to use. Now she used it all. Mixed compounds, created smoke that would choke, liquids that would burn, powders that would blind. The door shuddered, someone ramming it, wood splintering. Ellen positioned her weapons, handed some to Rena. When they come through, throw these. Cover your mouth. Don't breathe deep. The door exploded inward. Dravik's warriors flooded in. Ellen threw. Smoke erupted, thick, black, choking. Warriors stumbled, coughed, eyes streaming. Couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Rena moved through it like death. Sword work, clean, efficient, taking down enemies who were blind and gasping. Ellen grabbed Kira, used her body as shield, protected this child with everything she had. Then Dravik was there, through the smoke, massive, enraged. He saw Ellen holding Kira, smiled. Perfect. The witch and the air. He reached for Kira. Ellen stepped between them. No, Dravik laughed. Genuine amusement. You a weak human woman, you think you can stop me? I'm the woman her mother trusted. That's everything you're not. She threw acid in his face, concentrated, precise, directly into his eyes. He screamed, stumbled back, clawed at his face. Ellen grabbed a scalpel from the nearest table, held it like she knew what she was doing. She didn't. But he didn't need to know that. Dravik recovered, vision impaired but functional. Advanced on her, Ellen backed up, kept Kira behind her, held the scalpel steady. He was bigger, stronger, trained in violence Ellen couldn't imagine. But she'd learned something in 6 weeks, something she'd forgotten in 8 years. Mothers don't quit, mothers don't break, mothers fight until there's nothing left to fight with. She stabbed when he got close, dodged when she could, used tables as barriers, threw more compounds, made him work for every inch. He caught her arm, twisted. She felt something crack. Pain exploded. The scalpel fell. Dravik loomed over her, raised his sword for the kill. An arrow sprouted from his throat. He looked surprised, dropped the sword, fell. Rena stood in the clearing smoke, bow in hand, face grim. That's 3 times I've saved you. Ellen laughed, couldn't help it. Hysteria, relief, pain from her broken arm. Who's counting? Outside the sounds changed. Dravik's forces breaking, running. The stronghold's warriors pushing back. Victory. Ellen sat on the floor, cradled her broken arm, looked at Kira. You okay, sweetheart? You fought him. Kira's voice was awed. You could have run. You fought. Of course I did. You're my daughter. The words hung in the air. My daughter, said in front of Rena, in front of the stronghold, in front of everyone, claimed, owned, loved. Rena helped Ellen stand. Her arm was definitely broken, would need setting, but she was alive. Kira was alive. They'd won. They walked out into the corridor, into aftermath, bodies being removed, wounded being treated, council members assessing damage. Elder Morvac was there. She looked at Ellen, at this human woman with a broken arm and smoke in her hair and fierce determination written into every line of her face. You proved it, Morvac said quietly, not with words, with action, with love, with the willingness to do it for my great-granddaughter. She turned to the assembled crowd. More had gathered, news spreading. Ellen Thorne has earned our respect, our acceptance. She is clan friend, protected under our law, guardian of our heir. Any who challenge this challenge me directly. Silence. Then Counselor Mira stepped forward, placed a fist over her heart, bowed. Vrathkin, she said, the place worth defending. One by one the others followed, even the hostile ones, even those who'd opposed Ellen, bowing, acknowledging, accepting. Ellen's legs gave out. Rena caught her, held her up. You did it, Rena whispered. You actually did it. Ellen looked at Kira, at this child worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth everything. I kept my promise, she said. That's all, but it was everything. 6 months passed. Spring came to the mountains slowly, reluctant, but it came. Ellen stood in the eastern courtyard teaching a class. 8 young orcs, ages 7 to 12. They sat in a circle while she explained herbal properties. Yarrow for bleeding, she said, holding up the dried plant. Comfrey for broken bones. Willow bark for pain. Each one has a purpose. Each one must be respected. One student raised her hand. Teacher Ellen, what about poison? Every medicine is poison in the wrong dose. Every poison is medicine in the right one. That's why we learn, why we're careful, why we respect the plants. They listened, took notes, asked questions. Called her teacher without irony, without resentment. She'd earned her place here. Slowly, through teaching, through healing, through being consistently, persistently herself. Kira helped with the lessons, demonstrated techniques, translated when Ellen's orcish failed. The child had grown in 6 months, taller, more confident. She trained with warriors in the mornings, studied clan history in the afternoons, was becoming the heir she was meant to be. But she still called Ellen Mama, still slept in Ellen's quarters, still came to the herb garden to work side by side. Some things didn't change, didn't need to. Rena appeared at the garden gate. She came often. Friend, sister. The bond between them had deepened over 6 months of shared life, shared purpose. No romance, never that. Something better. Something that didn't need definition. Just was. Letter came, Rena said, holding out an envelope. From Ashwood. Ellen recognized Bee's handwriting, opened it carefully. The hawthorn tree was blooming. White blossoms like promises kept. Beautiful beyond words. Bee had placed stones on Sarah's grave. As Ellen had requested, as many as Ellen had years of grief. Tommy Morrison was well, getting tall, asked about Ellen constantly. Father Callahan maintained the cemetery, kept it perfect. Waiting. The town missed her, wondered when she'd visit. Ellen folded the letter, looked at Kira. Want to take a trip, Plea, Ashwood? Visit the graves. Kira's face lit up. Both mamas, both graves. We'll stay as long as you want. A week, a month if you want. Kira hugged her, fierce, complete. That evening, Ellen stood at her window, looked out at the stronghold, at mountains catching sunset fire, at a life she'd never imagined. She thought about Thora, about the question asked in a cemetery 6 months in a lifetime ago. Are you a good woman? Ellen still didn't know. Maybe she'd never know. But she was trying, every day, every moment. Trying to be worthy of trust given by a dying mother. Trying to deserve the love of a child who'd lost everything. Trying to honor 2 daughters, one in heaven, one here. Trying to be good. And maybe Ellen thought as she watched Kira laugh with other children in the courtyard below, maybe trying was enough. Maybe it had always been enough. Thora had seen it, had trusted it, had given everything based on it. Ellen touched the window, made a silent promise to the woman buried under a hawthorn tree in Montana. I'm keeping my promise. I'm loving her. I'm protecting her. I'm being the person you saw in a cemetery when everything was ending. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for seeing something I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for Kira. Below, Kira looked up, saw Ellen in the window, waved with both hands, joy in every movement. Ellen waved back, smiled. This was home now, not Ashwood, not the cemetery, not the cottage where she'd hidden for 8 years. Home was wherever Kira was, wherever love was, wherever trying to be good was enough. And that, Ellen thought as she turned from the window to begin packing for their trip to Ashwood, was everything. The gravedigger who'd heard a child cry in the darkness had found her way back to light. Not alone, never alone again. With a daughter, with family, with purpose, with promises kept and love given, and grief transformed into something bearable. With life, finally, impossibly, wonderfully with life.